There is a moment you have probably seen without knowing what you were watching. A bird lies still on the ground beneath your feeder, and for a few seconds, the yard does something you were not prepared for. Other birds do not scatter. They do not simply move on to the seed. They gather. They call. Some of them go quiet in a way that feels almost deliberate. And then, just as strangely, everything resumes as if nothing happened at all. You notice the pause. You probably assumed it was confusion, or maybe nothing, just birds being birds around a body they didn't understand. That assumption is wrong. What you saw was not confusion. It was information moving through a flock in real time, and it followed rules more specific than almost anything else birds do in your yard. Welcome back to the Bird's Lore. This episode is about what happens inside a flock in the minutes and days after one of its members dies, and why that response is one of the most deliberate, most cognitively demanding things a bird will ever do. Subscribe if you want to keep learning what your yard is actually saying to the birds who live in it, because by the end of this one, you will understand something about the quiet moment after a death that most people spend a lifetime near birds and never see. Start with the mechanism, because the surface behavior hides something specific. When an American crow encounters a dead crow, it does not simply notice and move away. Researchers at the University of Washington, working with wild crow populations for over a decade, documented what has become known as a crow funeral. Multiple crows converge on the body, call loudly, and in many cases, refuse to feed in that location for days afterward. This is not mourning in the way a human would recognize mourning. It is closer to an alarm broadcast, with a very long half-life. The gathering birds are not grieving the individual. They are recording a location, a set of circumstances, and in some cases, a specific threat, and they are encoding that information into the collective memory of the flock. That distinction matters because it changes what the gathering is for. A crow that finds a dead crow is not asking what happened to my friend. It is asking what killed this bird, and can it kill me too? The loud calling that looks like distress is functioning as a recruitment signal, pulling in every crow within earshot to witness the same scene. More witnesses means more individual assessments of danger, and more individual assessments means a more reliable collective judgment about whether the yard, the tree, the exact patch of ground beneath your feeder is now unsafe. This is why the gathering can look chaotic and urgent at the same time it looks strangely organized. It is a flock running a threat assessment in real time, using the clearest evidence available, a body. Before you ever saw that moment, something had already been building. Flocks do not respond to death from a blank slate. Every bird in that gathering has spent its life accumulating a working memory of which locations, which predators, and which humans are safe. And that memory does not simply hold facts, it holds context. A crow that has seen a hawk take a bird from a specific branch will treat that branch differently for the rest of its life, sometimes for years. Corvid researchers have shown that crows can retain and generalize threat information from a single witnessed event, applying caution to similar locations even when nothing has happened there directly. So when a body appears in your yard, it is not landing in a neutral space. It is landing inside a network of already formed judgments about where danger tends to come from, and the flock's reaction is shaped as much by that prior history as by the death itself. Not every version of this moment carries the same weight, and learning to read the differences gives you a real skill for understanding your own yard. A single dead bird found alone, with no obvious cause, tends to produce a shorter, quieter response. A brief gathering, a few calls, then dispersal. A death that is clearly linked to a visible predator, or to a specific object like a window or a feeder, produces a longer and more intense reaction, because the flock now has a mechanism to blame and a specific hazard to avoid. Timing matters too. A death that happens while other birds are actively present and watching generates a much stronger collective response than one discovered after the fact, because eyewitness information is treated as more reliable than second-hand evidence, the same way it would be for almost any social animal making a survival judgment. Go inside the bird itself, and the picture sharpens further. The behavior you are watching is being generated by a brain structure that should sound familiar even outside of birds, the amygdala, which in corvids is unusually well developed relative to body size, alongside a forebrain region called the nidopallium that supports the kind of complex, flexible learning crows are known for. Researchers at the University of Washington used PET imaging on crows exposed to dead conspecifics and found significant activation in the amygdala and in regions associated with stress hormone regulation, essentially confirming that what looks behaviorally like alarm is backed by the same neurological stress response you would expect from an animal encountering a serious, immediate threat. This is not a symbolic reaction. It is a full physiological event, the same category of internal experience a crow would have if it personally escaped a predator seconds earlier. What changes after that moment is where the story becomes most useful to you directly. Crows that have witnessed a death near a specific location have been shown to avoid that location, sometimes for weeks, and to treat any human seen near the body with elevated suspicion for an extended period afterward, in some documented cases for years. This is one of the only instances in backyard bird behavior where a single event can permanently reshape how a bird perceives a specific place, and by extension, how it perceives you if you were nearby when it happened. Your feeder, your porch, your specific patch of yard, all of it gets reevaluated in light of that one moment. If your feeder traffic drops sharply after finding a bird has died nearby, this is very often not coincidence. It is the flock updating its map of your yard with new information and choosing caution over convenience for a while. Smaller songbirds do not perform the same organized gathering, but they are not indifferent either. Black-capped chickadees, which live in tightly bonded winter flocks with strong social memory of their flockmates, show measurable increases in vigilance behavior after a flock member disappears or is killed, spending more time scanning and less time feeding for a period afterward. Blue jays, close corvid relatives of crows, have been observed producing sustained scolding calls directed at the location of a dead jay, a smaller-scale echo of the same recruitment behavior seen in crows, drawing in other jays to witness and assess. Even birds that never approach the body directly, like a nearby cardinal or a junco lower in the flock hierarchy, register the disruption. Their feeding pauses, their heightened stillness in the minutes after, is not misreading the situation. It is a quieter version of the exact same threat calculus running through the crows above them, tuned to a bird with fewer resources to spend on investigation and a stronger incentive to simply wait and watch. Once you understand what that gathering actually is, the whole moment changes shape. What looks like grief is closer to intelligence gathering. What looks like confusion is a flock running the most important calculation it will ever run about a specific place. Is this location still safe to return to? Every future decision those birds make near your yard, whether to keep visiting, whether to trust your movement near the feeder, whether to treat you as background or threat, can trace back to how that single moment was read and recorded. You are not just watching a reaction, you are watching a flock write history, in real time, about the ground you stand on. Picture the same yard again, the same still shape beneath the feeder, the same pause you have felt before without understanding it. Now you know what filled that silence. The crows that gathered were not mourning in the way you first assumed. They were building a record, calling in witnesses, deciding together whether this ground could still be trusted. The chickadees that went still were running their own smaller version of the same judgment, spending caution instead of calories. The blue jay that scolded from the branch above was recruiting more eyes to the same scene, the way its ancestors have for longer than your yard has existed. And the cardinal that simply paused, low in the hierarchy, watching without approaching, was doing the quietest and in some ways the most complete version of the same thing every bird in that moment was doing, reading the ground beneath it for what it might mean to return. The yard remembers longer than you think, and it is remembering you too,